Arsenal beat Manchester United, and Eric Ten Hag is complaining about offside goals. Maybe nature is healing. This is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. My name is Elliot Smith, Blackman Twitter, Yank Gunner. Bit of a froggy voice today. The byproduct of a week out with great Arsenal people in LA, and I am flying back after recording this. But currently, if you're watching on YouTube, you will see that I'm still in my hotel room, which hopefully they won't kick me out of while we're trying to record this, and had a final night out with everybody last night. Just been a tremendous trip. We won't spend a lot of time regaling you with the details of that, but I do want to say that it was wonderful to have Clive out here and thank him for making a very long journey to be out here for this. I know Paul and Tim couldn't make it, but having Clive out here was certainly special, and seeing the way people react to him, you realize how fortunate we are to have Clive as part of this show. Someone who speaks sense about the Arsenal while the rest of us just do whatever the heck it is we do. I think a big thank you to Andrew and James, who I had a wonderful time with. We did our live show at Cosm, and for those who were able to be there, thank you for being there. Big thank you to everybody who came and said hi and shared a drink or just a chat about the Arsenal, people we saw at the games and around at the events through the week. And it is incredible. I mean, there were more Arsenal fans than United fans at the game at SoFi, which I think is just a stunning reminder that we are going in the right direction. Manchester United, certainly one of the biggest clubs in the world, but out here, definitely a lot more Arsenal support was visible. And the energy around the club's palpable. So it's been a really special few days. It's always great to connect with Arsenal fans wherever we are, but to be this far away from London and to still feel this close to the club is really special. I will let you know that I am staring out at the Pacific Ocean right now, which makes it a little difficult to be too concentrated and focused, but that may also be a bit of the hangover. So your mileage may vary on that. And I do want to just thank you for sticking with us this week as we've tried to cobble together some content for you, and we'll return to normal service beginning tomorrow. So here with me now to talk about the game, though, and what's going on at Arsenal is Paul. You can find him on Twitter at PausMyPants. Pause.
Woohoo!
How's the FOMO?
Pretty big, pretty bad, pretty painful.
Yeah, you missed a lot of really amazing stuff. Probably some of the best stuff ever, really. So but I'm sure everything's been great for you. So,
watching from a distance. Was that you in with Biebs, with the Bieb in the box with the Bieb?
Yeah, Bieber and Russell Westbrook. I was just hanging out with all the celebrities, No, I was not hanging out with Bieber. In fact, as I walked by his suite, they ushered me to the other side of the hallway just in case I came too close to him. No, had no idea he was there until I saw the pictures. SoFi is incredible and very, very big, and it's one of those weird places because it's so incredible and the screen is so massive and there's so much going on there that it can actually be difficult to be focused on the actual sporting event taking place, the intensity of the sporting event. But yeah, it was really wonderful. No, I wasn't with Justin Bieber. Did you enjoy seeing all the celebrities come out to cheer on the Arsenal?
Yeah, though it was a little distracting in that I just learned that Adrian Dunbar, who you may or may not know, an actor from Line of Duty, who's looking for bent coppers. That's his thing. He's an Arsenal supporter, so that's kind of a big deal for me because we watched that series. But yeah, no, it was really cool to see the whole kind of that LA celebrity vibe that like this was a game, this is a sport, etc. At the end of the day, that's kind of a sideline to be concerned. But yeah, look, these trips are supposed to be fun. It's about getting the club out there, about getting that attraction. The fact that we have so much pull, that we're a young team, like all the fun on the pitch was from the Arsenal side, all the play, all the kind of, if you're there for a bit of sizzle, it only came from one side. And, it's pre-season, but like we did plenty of fun things. We kind of lit it up. We moved it around. There was lots of energy, creativity. It was a really good advertisement for the club and what we're doing and the way we play football, and the young players coming through obviously had a big spotlight. And I think that's the message you want out there as we're recruiting new suckers to join the pain and misery of following Arsenal over seasons and decades. Let's start them with a little fun, a little pizzazz, a little youth and vigor and vim and creativity.
Yeah, I think the intensity went up a bit, I think, from the last game to this. Before we get into the actual specifics of the game and some performances, did you feel that? I mean, that's just sort of my in-the-moment assessment, was that you could see the level go up even from one game to the next. So between the Bournemouth game and this game, did you feel the step up in intensity?
Yeah. It was all a lot more coherent. Obviously, you had a few more options, and I think a couple of players addition, a couple more senior players starts to tie it all together, and we were actually playing proper football this time around. The first game against Bournemouth was mainly an opportunity for them to go around trying to kick us for some reason. I think that's the kind of shape they're trying to get into in preseason. It seemed to be all about grudges, imagined perceived grudges against us. This was actually about, I don't know what this was about. I think this was just about outplaying United and getting some cohesion, getting some understandings going, partnerships back. And yeah, it was at a different level. There are many levels in preseason. I think we went from level 0 to about level 3 on the preseason scale.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a different preseason than last preseason, obviously, because not all the players are here. Some, still haven't returned to duty from the Euros. More academy kids on tour, and a mixed night for the academy in terms of some of the performances. I think Aiden Heaven. I just want to talk briefly about the goal he concedes. It can happen. You're an academy kid. You're in a big stadium. Maybe the moment catches up with you a bit, because I think they arranged the Bournemouth game quite late, and the tickets were not cheap. I mean, Arsenal fans not only turned out to support the club this week, but spent quite a bit of money to do so in many cases, and many people who came from all over the world to do that. But so the intensity of the Bournemouth game wasn't just lower from a footballing standpoint, but just in terms of the atmosphere and the amount of people there, and it's a much smaller ground. So I thought Heaven looked really good in that game. This is a different thing when you walk out on the SoFi pitch and it's a 70,000 seater stadium and that enormous screen is above you. And there were quite a lot of fans there. And I don't know if it was nerves, or I don't know if it was just the fact that he's a kid and Højlund is a big, strong man, and he got him in that moment. But what do you think, that particular moment? It wasn't great to see. And to be fair, I don't think Karl Hein did brilliantly as well. But what do you make of that moment?
I certainly grave that one on a curve in that fundamentally it's a kid against one of the biggest strapping, most athletic attackers. You may not be the most clinical attacker on the planet, but from the point of view of bumping and knocking a kid around, yeah, look, that's a size of player that Heaven doesn't play against on a regular basis, or indeed ever. And I thought he was pretty good throughout the game in terms of the rest of it. And
I agree.
you just got to say, if you come up against somebody that size, that's a learning curve about how you engage, whether you just screen, all that kind of choices you make as a center back. Yeah, it was a bad moment, a great learning experience. There's nothing to take out of it, right? That's entirely what you might expect if you play a kid center back against a strapping lad like Højlund, who's been doing this for multiple seasons now, and his whole thing is using his body and using his frame.
Yeah. I think he probably took a little bit of a bad angle and then wasn't physical enough with him in first contact, and then got beat for pace. And then the ball, I think, gets through, if I'm correct, from what I saw, the legs of Karl Hein at the near post, and probably should have closed the 5-hole there. Is that right? I mean,
yeah, I think so.
I think Heinz had a pretty good couple of games out here. Certainly reasonable. And in this game, and it's a shame that happened so early, because I actually think this happened with Hein and a couple of the players. I think they grew into the game, because he looked a little clunky with his feet early, and then started to settle and seemed a lot more comfortable. He looked a lot more like Arsenal after the first few minutes. But in general, I do think.
Can I say on Hein? Is it apparent when you watch him kind of live? But like, he's got good feet, right? He is part of the new generation where, unlike Ramsdale, who I think did very well with his feet, it was always something that he was kind of learning, forcing, kind of making happen. It was kind of like previous generation football. And I'm not knocking Ramsdale at all. He's been great for us and very good with his feet, considering. But I think there is an asterisk that there's kind of a new generation of goalkeepers, and he's of this new generation. Very, very comfortable, very easy, very natural. He doesn't have all his concentration on getting that ball onto his feet. Like, it's just, he's a footballer, not just a goalkeeper. And I think that's been one of the most interesting things about Hein. He's a very natural ball at feet, has time, makes angles, doesn't make it look hard.
Yeah, I don't think this will be the case, but I do wonder if he's given Mikel any pause to have a chance to be the number 2 this season. I would doubt it just because of a lack of experience and the need to go out and play a little bit more, but he has looked perfectly reasonable. And like, I think it is great for him that Raya hasn't been here for preseason, that Ramsdale hasn't been here for preseason, which, by the way, just on Ramsdale, a little bit interesting, right? That he didn't play at all for England, hasn't come back to get some time to be the number 1 in preseason. Now, look, he was training, he was with a team, he was away from his family. I mean, I want to be clear. When a player is with their international team, they are not on holiday. They're not with their family. They're not enjoying their time. They're not getting to turn their brain off of football. So that is clearly the case. But you
And
just
I wonder if the club is saying to him, take a nice long vacation. Don't create any headaches for us by having a stormer of a preseason and getting all that kerfuffle going and people saying, are we really sure that we don't want him as number 1 or we don't want him as a number 2 competing? Like they're probably like, take your time here and relax. Get yourself ready.
I guess the flip side is that could also make a market for him, which there doesn't seem to be much of one at the moment, but we'll see. You know, I think people know who Ramsdale is, but let's go to a few things that happened, I think, in the early stages of the game. That was when I think United looked their best from an attacking standpoint, but there was the moment with Lenny Yoro and Jesus should have punished him. I mean, they've spent a lot of money for an 18-year-old, and when you buy an 18-year-old center back, you're going to go through some growing pains, and he went through one right early on because a vibrant Gabriel Jesus, who was all over the pitch all night, was pounced on a mistake that Euro made. And I mean, this is probably Jesus in a nutshell, right? Which is so much good, so much tenacity, so much talent and skill and energy, but not necessarily the finishing instincts. And he doesn't fully punish them for the Euro mistake. What do you make of that moment?
Yeah, like Lenny was a bit of a Lenny in that moment. I don't know if you can be a bit of a Lenny, but I think that's what being a bit of a Lenny was. Came under it, bounced under his foot. He was all at sea. Jesus was sharp, quick. I was like, oh yeah, here we go. This is like there's 2 brilliant clinical versions of Gabriel Jesus. One is in Europe and the other is in pre-season. So I was like, here we go. This is how he came into the team. This is how he made a kind of set us all alight. But yeah, he had 2 or 3 good looks in this game. Should have put one of them away. But at least he looks physical, aggressive, fairly comfortable in it with his body, you would say, from what you see in terms of trusting it and coming back from injury, looks strong. And so assuming he's going to be with us for this upcoming season, like I thought it was interesting when we moved Salah-Eddine Ouladem Hand. I'm glad I'm getting to use that name finally. I've been working on it for 2 years.
You're going to pass Tim as the authentic namesayer.
Yeah. But like, does he use all 4 names? I'm not sure he does.
I think it's just Salah-Eddine, but yeah.
Well, no, it's not. It's Salah-Eddine Ouladem Hand. And his brother Ishmael, who wasn't playing in this particular game, Ishmael Ouladem Hand. But what were we saying? Oh yes, Gabriel Jesus. When he came on, or when they made a couple of changes, they moved Jesus to left wing, Hand to the false 9 spot, which is an interesting look. But you know, there is a real role for Gabriel Jesus off both wings and filling in at false 9, center forward. Like, the logic for keeping around seems strong. So if he's fit, strong, and at it, he's a real player and a real option, great option from either wing. That's how he.
I thought he was brilliant, like absolutely brilliant. And sure, there were probably 2 moments where I would have liked to have seen him get a shot off where he didn't. And that's like, he's at a stage of his career now where we know who he is. He is not going to be a clinical striker. That is not what he is. He can score goals because of the danger he causes and creates. He can provide assists because of how tricky and energetic he is around the box. But the way I think this is the key with Jesus. he was tracking back and winning the ball at the halfway line. He was linking up with the midfield. He was covering both wings. But critically, when Nwaneri was played in, where was Jesus? He was at the back post to tap it in. He wasn't standing in midfield because he hadn't been able to make the sprint. He looks bursty and energetic and fit. And I think people maybe have forgotten that fit Jesus is a hell of a player because we probably haven't seen fit Jesus since before the World Cup. And I think this is the problem for players. There are players who love to play football and care about playing football and want to play football and will do so injured or do so before they are fully recovered or do so with fluid on their knee or do so with this, that, and the other thing. And when they play that way and don't look like themselves, a lot of times people will say, they're washed or they're not good anymore. What happened to them? They're not as good as we thought. And a player's value and esteem can drop simply by virtue of playing half fit. I think Jesus probably falls into that category. Now, look, there's a long way to go. This is one preseason game, but I think what we see now is what looks to me to be a very fit Gabriel Jesus. And for just watching him, he pops in a way that he hasn't since pre-World Cup time. So whether that will mean that he can be the goal and assist maker that we need remains to be seen, but I certainly think the talent is in there. I guess the interesting thing, Paul, is in this kind of form and with this kind of effervescence to his game, I don't think he's just going to settle for playing out wide. I think he's going to believe that he has a chance to play striker for Arsenal. That's what he came here to do. And I don't think Kai Havertz at striker is as nailed on a certainty of what Mikel wants to do in every game as people might think. So does it fit Jesus maybe mean we see Kai at 8 again at times? Does it fit Jesus have a chance to take that role? Because I do think in Mikel's mind, it was always Jesus playing sort of false 9, 9.5, and Kai playing 8, but playing it almost as a support striker, a second striker. Yeah. And those two together make sense in that way. Unfortunately, Jesus was never fit enough to really see the vision of that dynamic. Do you think that we might be writing that off too soon? Could that be something that Mikel still wants to try?
Yeah, I mean, look, Jesus is going to be going into Mikel's office saying, boss, what's my situation here this year? What do I need to do to be starter at the central 9 position? And you would imagine Arteta saying, look, it's in your hands. Score goals and do a couple of these pattern things I'm looking for. And I think the pattern thing he's looking for is make those bloody runs behind. He's got Kai Havertz speed, but when Kai Havertz plays the 9, he runs in behind. Like every second run is in behind. He'll come short, then he'll run in behind. But the problem with Jesus is 4 out of 5 runs are him dropping, coming short, and only 1 run is a run in behind. Havertz is always on for the run in behind. If you just picture Jorginho with the ball at his feet, he doesn't even need to look up. He knows Havertz is going to make the run in behind that he can hit. And like those are the two things for Jesus. And the nice thing is he has competition. And so Jesus can settle into, I'm going to be slightly less generous with my build-up play and slightly more selfish and aggressive in terms of the runs I make for me and the runs I make to score goals. But at the end of the day, how did City end up using him? They used him off the wings. So that may just be where he needs to settle for. I mean, the one thing he also has going for him is it's not hard to imagine Havertz having a run of games where he's not putting the ball in the back of the net. He doesn't ooze clinicality. Fortunately, we get our goals from all over, but from a competitive situation, they both actually have a bit of the same potential flaw, which is they're not the most. They kind of get there by creating chances, by getting in that position many, many times. And, Havertz has some advantage in terms of physicality, height, and I think his tendency to run in behind. But if either one of them gets hot, they lock in that position, right? If Jesus scores in the first game of the season and in the second game of the season, he ain't getting dropped.
No.
So it's in his hands.
It's interesting how much Kai and Jesus are alike for two players who seem nothing alike in the sense that They both are tenacious off the ball. They both win duels. They'll both drop into midfield. They're both put in tremendous defensive work off the ball. They
Both
both
win.
have
Yep.
have a very high technical level, and both probably want one extra touch in the box and don't hit it with the ferocity they need to in the final action. But Jesus did get his goal, a great offside goal, as Ten Hag will have us know. And I'll put it this way: I don't know if it's offside. I just hope it was offside, and I hope we hear about it from Ten Hag for a long time. I want to talk about Nwaneri, his involvement in that goal and his performance overall.
Yes.
But before we do that, I just want to bring up one thing. I have been, I think maybe more than most, a Zinchenko backer in the sense that I think his importance to our ball progression is undervalued and the mistakes he makes are over indexed. And I think that has led to people to be more down on him because maybe there simply isn't the appreciation for how important ball progression is and how good he is at it. But I have to admit the ship is turning a little bit for me with Zinchenko. I just see him do too many things that aren't Arsenal, too many decisions where the risk reward ratio is wrong, too many big switches where there's a simpler pass he can make. Too many times he just steps that bit infield when he doesn't need to, or is holding the line too deep and allowing everybody to be played onside. I thought this was a pretty poor performance from Zinchenko, who I watched pretty closely because I was trying to get a sense of, what are we doing at left back? Is Calafiori coming in to be left back? Is Urian Timber going to be left back? I think Urian Timber can play basically anywhere. Having watched him these two games, he's a tremendous footballer. But I was not particularly impressed with Zinchenko, and it just felt, I think, it just felt like the kind of game people have been telling me he has that I've been reluctant to see, which is doing his own thing, essentially, and feeling very much like a footballer out of step with the discipline and organization that summarizes who Arsenal is and has been for the last couple of seasons. So they targeted him. I thought he looked a bit vulnerable. I thought his passing was looser than usual. I don't know, Paul. I don't want to kill the guy. It's a preseason game, but I think
Yeah.
I just want to express that I find my viewpoint shifting towards what maybe is more of a mainstream view that he just might not be the fit for what we want to do there.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I was just thinking, you know, the thought I had this morning out of nowhere was like the efficiency of that purchase. I mean, it was 35 million for a guy, and 35 million here, 35 million there. It starts to add up to real money, and like we're not quite sure what he is to us now. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and like we were very excited when he came. He definitely changed how we played. Maybe that was his role for a year or two to shore us up and to change the dynamic and to, him and Jesus in that dressing room. The leadership they brought was technical leadership. This is the new way we play. We're already on this page. Come join us. Not a bunch of guys trying to imagine how it would feel to play this positional football. Those were two reference points on the pitch with, you can add your Odegaards and your Sakas who were already there and a few other players. Those were your reference points for getting to juego de posición, right? Those guys were playing that and you went and met them. And maybe that was the core role they played on it. His importance may be as significant off the pitch. And like, I hate that expression. It's the most boring thing, the most tired thing to ever say. His value is like off the pitch, in the training, in the dressing room, but in that particular case, because we're trying to transition and jump up levels to a way of playing, he's like quintessential positional play. And stepping into midfield, a free role, that's just almost a principle of free. Somebody is going to step in. Is it the centre back? Is it the right full back? Somebody's going to step in from nowhere and be the free man. And he did that brilliantly at times. But yeah, I mean that like he seems to have on his checklist of things to do in each game, pass that drops our team into it. And I think he was passing to Jorginho, left it short. Actually, Jorginho did great and saved the day with a save the day. Okay, it was preseason, but saved the preseason um, and kind of got us out of trouble. But it's like inexplicably he does these passes. He's like, which one of you bastards done me wrong? I'll drop you in it. And he's got one of those passes every game. But besides that, all I'd say is for him. It's another one of those. It's preseason. He's barely played. Let him warm up. But but big question mark. Calafiori. I mean, if he's not coming for Zinchenko's chase, he's coming for Gabriel's place, and that is the worst thing that could ever be done to anybody. I love Gabriel. Leave him alone. Go play left back.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to talk Zinchenko is not that I thought that it was like a major issue, and this is this was a terrible performance. I don't want to get hyperbolic. I think it's more the fact that we kind of thought Timber was going to be left back. Now we're buying a guy we kind of think is going to be left back. We still have Kivior, who has played left back. So like the left back hierarchy certainly is a hot topic at the moment. And just quickly on Timber, because we need to get to Nwaneri and Martinelli and a lot of good stuff going on. But like Timber has played center back in both games. He's looked fantastic in his own right. Playing next to an academy kid too, which, that's not the easiest thing in the world. And it's just so interesting because I think Mikel rates Timber extremely highly, but he has gone out and gotten Calafiori. And I think, when Timber came to us, he was coming to us sort of as a right back from or had been a right back, whether he was there to play left back. That's how he started last season, I realized, but we had injuries. Do you have a sense of that role? Because he's looked great in 2 games. He's obviously a fantastic player, but suddenly we have this platoon of defenders, Saliba, Gabriel, White, Zinchenko, Kivior, Calafiori, Timber. Maybe 1 or 2 will go out, but it's a lot of quality and a lot of people that are going to think that they deserve a place in the team every week.
Yeah, another mystery for me. I'm more confused than ever with Mikel. Obviously, fundamentally, I trust the guy, and like I think, at the end of the day, I think he's a real sense of what he needs for his team. But I don't know what that is, and I look at this and I'm like, I don't get it. If he'd turned around and basically said, "Look, we got Timber to do this left back thing," I'd be like, "Yeah, of course we do." Andrew, Arsblog, has been saying, I don't think he bought Timber to be left back, and I don't think that's what's. And I've been thinking as I listen to the Arscast, Andrew, you're full of shit. You don't know what you're talking about. You're completely wrong. He's said it multiple times, and every time I'm like, that's me being skeptical,
laughing, skeptical, guffawing. Yeah, mm-hmm.
Yeah. Turns out he might be right. He's a great footballer. Let me tell you what I'm worried about with Timber, because like Arteta hasn't picked a position for him, and like either he's a guy who can play everywhere, but he'd be back up to White, he'd be back up to any of the centre backs, and he must be back up to Calafiori. He's a great footballer. He can probably do anything. The one fear I have about Timber, and I wonder if this is why Arteta hasn't plumped on him, is he has a bit of the Onanas about him. I don't know how you feel about that statement. Yeah, in the look how good I am at football thing. Now, only a little bit of Onana, and maybe a little bit of Onana's okay, but as a centre back, you need a very, very serious, dull, a corporate, a suit. Does the dull thing 99 times out of 100, is occasionally forced into beating everybody on the pitch, but only because that was the only option left to him. You can have a bit more excitement at left back or right back, and with positional play from one of those positions, you can have a lot of creativity. But you can't be having Calafiori going nuts from left back and Timber going nuts from right back, and he still has to get past White to be in that spot at right back. Look, I love it. I love a team with this many choices and options and great players that you want to see on. But I don't know what the hell's going on with Timber. If Arteta told me he's our left back and you've seen what he could do when he's fit, I'd have said, yep, I totally get it.
I'll just say this. We all fell in love with Ramsdale and we thought we had a superstar goalkeeper. And Mikel didn't agree. And he canned him for David Raya. I'm not saying that's the plan with any of the players we like in the first team currently, but I think you have to keep an open mind to the idea that Mikel may not feel that the players we love are the settled final option. I think there's always going to be that little splinter in my mind of how last season started with Gabriel on the bench and the rumors of a move to Saudi. And that's the one. I mean, I love Gabriel. And it's not just that I love Gabriel, it's that I love the Gabriel and Saliba pairing. I think there's
Yeah.
something about that pairing where the characteristics of those players fit like a glove. But I at least have to keep an open mind to the fact that between Timber and Calafiori, we have players that are left-sided defenders that can play center back and fullback and that are definitely going to think they should have the shirt every weekend. So we'll see what happens with that. So let's get on to Nwaneri, because that's really been the headline of the preseason so far. And look, there is a tendency when there's an exciting kid in the academy to want to anoint them as the next thing and think that they should get minutes and think they should be in the team. And like 9 times out of 10, they shouldn't be and they're not ready. But that 1 time out of 10, they should be, and they're Bukayo Saka, right? That 1 time out, or 1 time out of 100. But Nwaneri might be that 1 time out of 100.
Yeah.
There are things he does, and as I watched the game, it wasn't that I was watching Nwaneri just to see, will he kick the ball in the net or will he create a goal, which he did. Where does he go? What responsibility does he take? Do the other senior players look for him and give him the ball? Does he build relationships with like an Odegaard, right? And it's just so eye-catching how he looks like he's part of the team. Miles Lewis Skelly has played in both of these games. I think he's looked quite good, but he's looked good in the way that academy kids sometimes look good, where like they're waiting for their moment. Their moment comes, they make one good pass and they think, all right, I've done a good thing there. I've contributed. And like, that's great. That's a step. But Nwaneri just has the personality in the team to be part of what the team are doing. I don't know if I'm articulating that in a way that makes sense, Paul, but obviously his movement for the goal, very intelligent, finds the space, holds his line, drops back on side, perfect cross to Jesus for the goal. But it's all the other little details in his game that really stand out to me. And I think there is that saying, if you're good enough, you're old enough. Nwaneri, I'm not saying he should start, against Wolves when the season kicks off, but he is good enough to be in this Arsenal team and play for this Arsenal team at a level above preseason. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, there is a really interesting thing when there's a skill we are developing as supporters watching pre-seasons with academy kids. There's a difference between, oh look, he's got talent in his feet, and oh look, he did a thing, and he played well individually. And then there's the thing Saka has, where it's like an old man brain in terms of football, an experienced player, a senior player. And Nwaneri is he's seeing the game and his role in it that you see with the Cesc. He comes in and he knows what his role is within the team. And it's not just about give me the ball and I'll do a thing. The other thing he has is such quick feet, ability to buy time, space, take a touch around a player. I mean, he just buys himself so much space to do something dangerous. And the third thing is he gives us something that I don't think we have anywhere else in this team, and something we don't have in midfield, that super high level of technical skill, verticality, speed, running, vision, eye for the pass. Like Odegaard is more in an area. Nwaneri has that verticality where he can move all over the pitch at speed. Like they do different things. We don't have anybody for the left eight that like if I'm Arteta, I'm like, ooh, I want that option. Maybe it's option off the bench at times this season and cup games, and let's see how it develops for it. But like that's one I'm not letting go. That is not your academy kid in preseason. Like we have a lot of a vibe about this player coming into it, and all he's doing is confirming it. The guy looks like, I think everybody looked at it and felt, ooh, this guy, actually, this could be the season. It may not be another season with this guy.
And, to your point about position, left eight is certainly one where there's a chance for someone to make a name for themselves, back up to Odegaard as well. I think it is telling that in both games, Nwaneri has played in midfield and Vieira has not. Because Fabio Vieira was a reasonably expensively acquired player with a tremendous reputation coming out of Portugal. I think he's a very talented player. Injuries and some other factors have prevented him from really breaking through at Arsenal. But you would think left 8, right 8 are two positions that he will be in line for minutes this season, backing up Odegaard and maybe even starting games at left 8 because of the characteristics he has. And Mikel said, no, go stand out on the wing. The 17-year-old's gonna get the midfield minutes. And I think for Vieira to have to play off the wing so that Nwaneri could get midfield minutes is extremely telling. Now, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it feels like, if Mikel thought Nwaneri was further away from the first team, maybe he would have said, go play on right wing, try to influence the game, beat a man off the dribble. I need to see Fabio Vieira at 8. He didn't do that, and I think that is significant. And ultimately, because of the level we are at and what we're trying to accomplish, more than 90 points, win the Champions League, the big, big, big things. I'm not saying that a 17-year-old's development should be the priority, but the great thing see, this is the thing I think people get wrong. They talk about pathways. Oh, we didn't make a pathway for this player. We didn't make a pathway for that player. I actually think it's the job of the player to make a pathway for themselves by being too good to not use. And this is the beautiful thing about Nwaneri. I don't think we have to make a pathway for him because I think we're going to need him, not the other way around. The academy players that aren't stars need the club to make room for them. The academy players that are stars make room for themselves by being really good, right? Bukayo Saka was too good not to play. And I think Nwaneri is probably in that talent level where there will be times when we need him. Not that he needs us to find, can you give me League Cup minutes? There will be times we need him, and I think we'll call on him. And I believe that he will play this season. I'm not saying 2,000 minutes. I'm not saying, he's going to start the Champions League final for us. I'm saying he'll play the last 10 minutes of the final after it's won. But I think he is going to play, and I think he is a tremendous talent. By the way, we did come through the game unscathed, as far as I'm aware, from an injury standpoint. United can't say the same, and that's always the thing with preseason is, the fitness concerns. They lose Højlund to a groin injury. They lose Lenny Yoro to humiliation. Is that what it was? I don't know. I don't know that they announced it.
But he got Lennied.
He did get Lennied. And it is a reminder, by the way, we're talking about it. Can Ethan Nwaneri, an attack-oriented player who's 17, find a few minutes at Arsenal? Meanwhile, Manchester United are trying to start an 18-year-old center back. Like it just feels like he's being thrown to the wolves in a club that is very different from who we are and where we are at the moment. I think what summed that up for me was watching Rashford sort of phantom his way around the pitch. Like at one point I turned to Clive because I know Clive has rated Rashford quite highly. And I'm like, Rashford hasn't had a great game, has he? And Clive was like, I totally forgot he was playing. Like literally totally forgot he was playing. And Jadon Sancho, who's still there, but doesn't look like he wants to be there. Just we're miles and miles apart from them. And it's so beautiful. I think we should talk about Martinelli's cameo. And it says so much about these players and their professionalism today. Once upon a time, players would come back from their holidays, 15 pounds overweight. They'd need to shed the weight. They'd need to sweat off all the beers they'd been drinking. Now Martinelli, Havertz, and Gabriel should come back from a short holiday, ready to play literally a day after they've landed. And they all did play. And Martinelli didn't just play, but he made an impact. And I loved Martinelli's cameo. You will not be surprised to learn. But what I loved about it was the arrogance of it. And what I mean is, I think really good players, when they are up against someone who is not their equal, delight in destroying them. And Martinelli was up against a kid at right back for United that had no business defending Gabriel Martinelli. And he was screaming for the ball. He was gesticulating. From the moment his feet hit the pitch, he was furious every time the ball didn't come to him because he knew, I can absolutely roast this guy. And the first time it came to him, he just blew right by him, chipped across. The Kai, I think, would have headed in if not for a great defensive intervention, actually. Was it Evans with the hook clearance away from Kai's head? I can't remember. But yeah, he just had him on toast and then obviously burns him for the goal that he scores. We talked about Jesus. Now we're talking about Martinelli. Those are two players who did not have the seasons they would have wanted last season. But in all the worry about how we increase our attacking power this season, how we up our offensive game, I think the most obvious answer is we get more from these two very talented players who didn't give us enough last season. And, while everyone talks about Nico Williams, I think we have a player who can do a lot of those things in our squad in Martinelli. And he's just one cameo in preseason so far, so we don't want to go too far over the top with this. But to me, Paul, I mean, that looks like the player I remember,
Yeah, looked great. To testament to the guys. The guys always had a phenomenal attitude, absolutely brilliant from when he came in as a kid, and you can only want good things for him and good things for him at Arsenal. This is probably his Arsenal career determining season. Like it has to. He needs to get back to where he was before, or you just sense that his story will end up being a different kind of story than the one we wanted painted for him. But on the other hand, I think so much of why he struggled last season is about partnerships in his area, and the
Yeah.
whole left side was it was all right at best. It was rarely good. It rarely clicked, and that's the big upgrade we're looking for, right? And the players we play in that area, and so how Calafiori, if that's who we see most often from the left back, and Nwaneri, in terms of his touch and his skill, his vision, his movement, his patterns, somebody like that in the left 8 spot more often. What might that mean for bringing Martinelli into it, cleverly pulling him infield? It seemed like Martinelli and Jesus had the best partnership from a Martinelli standpoint to bring him into the game. So it's kind of went up a little bit there. It's kind of with Martinelli. I think, who does Arteta put in his area of the pitch that will determine how good a season he has? And maybe that's a criticism to some degree of Martinelli, in that he's really good at certain things, but he's not the most complete footballer. He doesn't have the full package like Saka does, but he's got some extreme capabilities on a couple of the axes. And if you can get the right people in his area to set him off, he can have a great game, a great season. So it'll be, I think, for Martinelli, critical season. He looked great. He's up for it. We all love the guy. And he needs to get back to banging in the goals and getting into the box and threatening. And that's a little bit about who we put in his area, from the central striker to the left 8 to the left back. And the exciting thing is it's going to be all different this season on that side.
Yeah, I think that's right. And by the way, a player who might have played a bit on that side, where he's still at Arsenal this season, would have been Emile Smith Rowe. And as we record this, it does appear that his move is being finalized now to Fulham, being reported as 27 million fixed fee with 7 million in add-ons. I mean, we don't have to pick the bones out of whether that's the right fee or not. I think it's pretty simple. If he plays a lot, it'll feel like it was too little. If he can't get fit, it'll feel like we got a great number there. So I hope he does stay fit. I hope he makes that fee look paltry. I hope he absolutely crushes it, except against us. So, certainly wish him the best. I think the thing with preseason, obviously, is like, you can overdo it. You can overanalyze it and take it to mean more than it does, or imbue it with more importance than it has. But Paul, I know you think preseason is the real season. Instead of getting into too many individual performances beyond the ones we've talked about, is there anything you've seen in these 2 games or in this last game, or any dynamic from the preseason that you think looks different, or something we're trying that may be unique? I do think as the game ended, after Nketiah came on, we were almost playing like a 4-2-4. There was this moment where Kai and Eddie were both up top, sort of top of the box, either side of the D, and Martinelli and maybe it was Vieira were out on the wings, almost as a line of 4. It was interesting. It was a different look. So any tactical differences or shifts in philosophy, or features of the way we've played in the first 2 games that you're curious about, or you consider to maybe be an evolution in our play?
I think the game plan, the principles seem very, very similar. It's really the change in personnel, and you see when you see a Nwaneri in the left 8, you see a different kind of personality coming through, different possibilities. I think it feels very much the same plan, more options, more ability to refresh, plug other players in, different looks from the same spots. And so, that patch where we ran into the end of December and we ran out of players with legs and energy, the ability to kind of bring on a different profile from a similar approach but different profile on 70 minutes. I mean, I think it feels like the options have gone up 2-3 times with the players we're adding in those spots. Really, the only area I still feel uncertain about is that kind of attacking left side of the pitch. Who will be our left winger? Who will be our left eight most of the time? And like, I think that's the thing I'm most unsure how that'll work. But I just think somehow it feels like he's got double, triple the options in most positions. Or, one or two players who can play in a couple of different positions gives you all sorts of options.
Yeah.
I think Arteta's set up to do that thing he's talked about wanting to be able to do, bamboozle the opponent with your starting 11, with the changes you can make, with the moves you can make within a game. I think it's more about optionality, combinations, different profiles, but same structure, approach, philosophy.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. By the way, I'm not struggling to listen to you, Paul, or concentrate, but there are literally dolphins jumping out of the ocean in front of me right now. That's an unusual way to try to record a podcast. I don't know how anyone who lives out here gets anything done ever. But well, by the way, there was a penalty shootout. Obviously, it doesn't matter. Nothing about the penalty shootout matters. Kai's penalty was saved. There were a couple of missed penalties, but I do have to just point out that Onana was really good value for money in the shootout. He was hilarious. He was being a complete clown, kept taking the ball, not giving it back. He did this thing. Did you see the shootout? He did this thing.
Yeah.
Where he was like when Vieira stepped up to take the first penalty, where he like stood all the way on one side of the goal and like showed Vieira the other side. And he's like, here, hit it here. And then he did the same thing to Gabriel, and Gabriel hit it there and then like pointed at Onana and told him to shut up. Like, I don't know if it was, I don't think it was bad tempered. I think it was actually very silly and funny, but yeah, it was a bit of a clown show, the penalty shootout. Let's put it that way. So that wraps that game. The Liverpool game comes up next. I think it's going to start to get serious here because, once it crosses over in August, like we're not that far away from the games coming back. I imagine that Saka and Raya will probably not join up with the U.S. tour. I don't think that's the plan. So I don't think we'll see them at any point during the U.S. portion of the tour. But, Philadelphia is up next. I think we'll probably see a lot of the same kind of thing, a step up in preparation. Calafiori, I think, is flying out to join the team. I don't think we'll see him play in the tour, but we may see him announced literally any moment. So that will be exciting, and we'll get a chance to start really thinking about how he fits in. But I think we can just start to wrap. As a final question, Paul, do you have any thoughts on transfer business, on things that we need to try to think about getting done? I mean, as we see the players come back, I feel a little more at ease about the attack, seeing the form of Jesus and Martinelli. And obviously defensively, I think we're sound. But would you say that there's still a need in midfield that we need to address? And maybe it is Mikel Merino, but is that the one bit of business that you think needs to get done to feel really good about how we're positioned for the season? I think, yeah.
Sorry, we had a bit of audio lag there on my side, but in terms of things we need to address in the market, feels like we're pretty close to set if we do the Calafiori. The Mikel Merino's a really interesting one. I totally get why, in my mind anyway, why Arteta wants Merino. I think he's such an Arteta kind of midfielder, that accomplished, balanced pro who knows what's needed in the moment in the game, controlling that left side, the kind of the Spanish midfielder, just smart player who knows where to be, what to do, what the game, kind of like what you saw in late era Xhaka, where he kind of knew what the game needed. as the pro in that area, the pattern, the move, whether to kind of attack the box, whether it was time for triangles to make space. Like, I think he would partner really well with Martinelli in the same way Xhaka did, in that he would make that outside run to make the space for Martinelli to come inside or take at the wide position. I've seen him do that on video in games. Like, he just knows the patterns to play for that style of football, and I think he can have be a big addition to this squad across the 50 games we have. It doesn't feel like there's an attacker coming in. I could see why we'd go after an attacker. More goals. But if we're keeping Jesus, I mean, there's a very strong argument to say we're pretty well set in the attacking end of the pitch. And if we keep Nwaneri around as a kind of a special kind of profile that grows throughout the season, he could have a very important part to our run-in. Like, you can get greedy, but it feels like we're well on our way if that's what we got. I think we're significantly stronger. Again, options-wise, you can look at 3 or 4 players who can play in almost every position, including, finally, an option to back up maybe Odegaard from time to time with, like, you could see Nwaneri doing the Odegaard job for a game or two as he matures through the season. So just feels like we're getting the kinds of options.
Yeah. Well, I think given some audio issues that we're starting to have and the fact that I need to get on a plane home and that we'll get back to normal service after this, we should leave it there. I will say as a final point, because I meant to mention this earlier, I think Reece Nelson has looked bright in these 2 games, and you can see why Mikel probably thinks there's something in there and hasn't been as decisive about Reece as he maybe could be. There's a player in there. I just have no doubt there's a player in there. Fitness has held him back at times, and maybe he hasn't been quite at the level that's needed. But I do wonder, because there's some links with him making a move that, I tend to think are real. But he has looked good in these preseason games. I'll be curious to see if Mikel maybe talks himself into the idea that he can use that player one more time. So we'll see. We'll leave it there. We've got some stuff going out on Patreon this week for you, and then main pod will come back from my normal environs on Thursday. So thanks for being with us again. Met so many amazing people this week, and I had so many good chats about the Arsenal and just such a good time with people who listened and came up and said hello. And I can't tell you how much it means. It's just the absolute best experience to meet everybody who's part of the community and loves Arsenal the way we do. So thanks for that. And feels just very special to have had a chance to do this. Look forward to talking to you on the next one. We'll definitely get an instant reaction out, by the way, after the Liverpool game, so you can check that out if you want. Paul's on Twitter, Pause My Pants. Thanks, Pause. My name's Elliot Smith, Blackman Twitter, Gunner. We love you, and we will talk to you after Arsenal 10, Liverpool 0.